Canada has kicked off the largest immunization campaign in the country's history. Now, this has brought a sense of relief to many, but also concerns about vaccine mandates and its impact in the workplace. For more on this, we're joined by Lior Samfiru, labor and employment lawyer. Lior, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot to get to, and a lot of people are wondering this because there are obviously many sides to this issue. But let me begin with this. Can employers require their workers to get vaccinated?
Anthony, that is the big question. As you can imagine, this is an unprecedented situation. We don't have much guidance from our courts on this issue. We've never had a virus like this or a vaccination campaign as extensive. So let me give you my best knowledge on this matter. Generally speaking, an employer is not going to be able to require an employee to be vaccinated. And that is because there could be various human rights issues here. There could be rights with respect to someone's religion or health. They may not be able to be vaccinated because of health. There could also be simply a discrimination if you require vaccination based on a medical condition. If you believe that someone cannot work because they may have a medical condition, that could be a human rights issue as well. So I think except in those industries where an employer can show that it's impossible to work safely unless you are vaccinated, except in those very, very limited circumstances, Anthony, an employer is not going to require and mandate that employees be vaccinated.
Now, there's the other side. A lot of people are saying, well, how can you create a safe workplace if certain individuals are not getting vaccinated? How would you respond to that? Because we're seeing a challenge in the United States as well. And one of the groups there, early indications say that workplaces, employers have the obligation really to create a safe workplace. And that would include getting vaccinated.
That is one of the most fundamental obligations that employers have, which is to keep workplace safe. That said, over the past 9 months, like it or not, we've learned to live with the coronavirus, and our governments have decided that as long as you implement certain measures, social distancing, wearing masks, etc., the workplace is still safe. So therefore, an employer is going to have a hard time saying, well, now it's not safe unless you've been vaccinated. Now, if you're in elderly care, child care, if you're in healthcare, you may be able, as an employer, to show, well, this is too risky. But in most workplaces, I think employers can still meet their obligation to keep their workplace safe as long as they follow the guidelines that they've been following to date, which is why to say, well, the only way to keep you safe is to be vaccinated, I think that would be excessive, certainly without government intervention, which is why, going back to my main point, that employers, in most cases, the vast majority of cases, I think, will not be able to mandate vaccines.
Now, you brought up the idea of masks and that being potentially an alternative to keep the workplace safe. And I want to go back to a challenge a few years ago. Nurses in Ontario challenged a policy in court and won, keep in mind, that would have seen them be forced to wear a mask if they did not receive the flu vaccine. Keep in mind, they argued in many cases that it would have separated them and it would have told everyone that they were not getting a vaccine effectively. That's one of the arguments. How would you respond to that?
Well, ultimately, something's got to give. We have now a virus that's certainly much more deadly and more contagious than the flu. It's at a different level. And an employer does have to keep workplaces safe. We have a right as a society, as consumers, as patients in a hospital to be safe. So I think that line can be drawn at wearing masks, and employers will be able to require masks despite the precedent with the nurses and the flu vaccine. This is a different, much more severe situation. And I think that safety, the fact that there is that need to protect thousands and thousands of people, will mean that employers can say, well, if you're not being vaccinated, then yes, you do have to wear a mask, despite the implications of that.
Do you see employers attempting to force their workers to do so and then eventually being challenged in court?
Yes, I think ultimately, Anthony, this is going to end up in courts or before tribunals like the Human Rights Tribunal, the Labor Board. I think employers, many of them, will want to be employees to be vaccinated, and sometimes it could be even as a PR move to say to the customers, to their clients, just so you know, everyone here has been vaccinated, therefore you should feel comfortable coming in to our establishment. So I think there's going to be that pressure. I think as long as employers are reasonable and they allow exceptions for medical reasons, for religious reasons, they may be able to get away with more, but a blanket rule is a problem.
Well, Lior, you raised some important questions. We appreciate your time. Lior Samfiru, employment lawyer.